Chapter 271. Hee hee, it's all my fault, Graham. I must have been sleepwalking. I promise you it won't happen again. I swear, Orissa assured Graham. Benjamin's eyes gleamed. She actually thought she was the one who crawled into my bed. Oh well, I'll just let it be then. He poked Orissa's back and she instantly fell back into his arms. She stared at him in disbelief. Just one poke and I'm in his arms again. What the hell? How can I believe you when you don't walk the talk? The atmosphere became tense as Benjamin flashed a smile that did not reach his eyes. Orissa felt helpless. When did I ever fail to keep my promise? I will definitely keep my word. I don't know what else I can do to make you believe me. She huffed in frustration. In the next moment, however, she had a wicked glint in her eye as she traced her fingers over his body. Could it be that you were the one who carried me over to the bed? Benjamin stared at her in amusement, as if telling her it couldn't have been his doing. Orissa was in a bind. Since he didn't do it, I must have crawled into his bed then. Anyway, we're just sleeping together. Why would you ask me to be your partner if you mind it so much? Do you have to sleep with me just because you're my partner? Benjamin arched his brow and spoke in a haughty tone. Orissa laughed dryly. Weren't you the one who wanted to sleep with me back then? Why are you acting all high and mighty all of a sudden? Graham, don't you know that honesty is the best policy? There's no shame in admitting to it. She trailed her hand down his abs as she spoke. Benjamin's gaze darkened as a bulge began to form in his pants. He felt as if he had been possessed and was dangerously close to the point of no return. Woman, do you know what you're doing? He spoke in a deep, raspy voice as he locked his gaze on her. Orissa's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly retracted her hands. Hee hee, you kissed me just now. So why can't I touch you? Does he think he's the only one who's allowed to make the first move? Benjamin stared at her with a dangerous glint in his eyes. Just as Orissa was about to roll off the bed, the door to the ward was pushed open abruptly. Benjamin, look what I've brought for you. Sean and Kingsley barged into the room. Their eyes widened in surprise when they saw the couple together on the bed before they smiled knowingly. Orissa quickly flipped over and sat up straight. She straightened her clothes and rushed into the restroom to clean herself up. This is so embarrassing. Benjamin glanced at her and turned his attention over to Kingsley and Sean. He didn't look the least bit embarrassed even after getting caught. What are you guys doing here? Hee hee. Kingsley chuckled with malicious glee. Sean gave Benjamin a look and walked right in. He seems to be in a good mood today. Tisk tisk. You're disappointed because we've interrupted something good, right? Kingsley went over and teased Benjamin. Benjamin gave him a piercing glance. So you're aware of that? Why are you here then? Sean and Kingsley exchanged looks of amusement. My, what a rare sight. Kingsley glanced in the restroom's direction and asked Benjamin, did the two of you sleep? Kingsley, how was the view yesterday when you're up on the mountains? Benjamin asked coldly. Kingsley's mouth twitched as he glared at him. Benjamin, what sort of a friend are you? I was just joking. How could you leave us up there? Don't you know I almost died? Sean was fuming with anger as he stared at Kingsley. Unbeknownst to Benjamin, they spent the rest of the night playing mobile games. However, their phone batteries ran out only after 2 hours. Kingsley, being the wuss that he was, wouldn't let him have any shut-eye. In the end, both of them stayed up all night. When it was finally dawn, they hastily made their way down the mountain, bought breakfast, and headed right over. You're fine now, aren't you? Benjamin said harshly. He then got up and made his way to the restroom. Chapter 272. Kingsley pointed at Benjamin furiously. He was at a loss for words. Sean gloated over his defeat. Ha, serves you right. Are you stupid? Weren't you punished as well? How could you laugh at me? Kingsley glared at him. You were the one who dragged me into this. Sean scowled. Can you please stop messing with Benjamin? He reckoned he would have been punished again if Benjamin wasn't in a good mood just now. Kingsley said to Sean in a low voice, Hey, don't you think he's in a really good mood today? Well, obviously, you wouldn't be standing here right now if he wasn't in a good mood, Sean replied. Kingsley pursed his lips. He's right. He took his breakfast out and dug in. We're not going to wait for them. Sean was amused as he watched Kingsley wolf down the food. I think they're still brushing their teeth. Anyway, I'm almost dying of hunger. I need to console my frightened self. Kingsley was so loud that Orissa could hear everything from the restroom. She gave Benjamin a look out of the corner of her eye when he entered the restroom. Benjamin reached for his toothbrush, squeezed some toothpaste on, and brushed his teeth. Orissa shuddered when she realized how close he was to her. She simply needed to lean back a little and she would be in his arms. Can't you scoot over to the other side? She was worried that her hair might be splattered with foam even though Benjamin was a lot taller than her. Benjamin looked at the woman in the mirror and scoffed. Fine, he's the boss. With that thought, Orissa moved over to the other side to wash her face. She was already done washing up when Benjamin finished brushing his teeth. I want to pee, but I think I should do it later. Mrs. Graham, come and have some breakfast. Kingsley and Sean called out to Orissa. She smiled and nodded in response. Oh, okay, you can dig in first. I'm going to tidy things up. Orissa made up the bed and went into the restroom to relieve herself after Benjamin was done washing up. Benjamin, come and have breakfast. Kingsley gave him a look. Benjamin walked over and sat down. He glanced at the breakfast they brought and frowned. Kingsley and Sean looked at him and knew he was about to pick on the food. Dig in first. That's all they have around here. Sean smiled. Benjamin felt a little annoyed. I guess she won't be making breakfast for me anymore since they've already bought breakfast. Come on, dig in. It's hygienic and tasty. You should try commoner food from time to time. Don't act like such a dignified creature. Kingsley handed him some sausages. Benjamin glanced at his hand but didn't accept it. Kingsley's lips twitched. Damn it, how can someone be so difficult to deal with? Hey, I never complained about you leaving us up on the mountain and even bought breakfast for you. You should be grateful. Did I ask you to buy me breakfast? Benjamin shot him a look. Kingsley was rendered speechless. What the heck? Here, Benjamin, have some oatmeal porridge instead. Avoid the oily stuff for now. Sean handed him a bowl of oatmeal porridge. Are you feeling better now? Sean noticed that his face and neck weren't as red as before. Yeah, Benjamin stirred his oatmeal porridge, took a spoonful, and ate it. The taste's all right I guess. Just then, Orissa walked over and sat down beside Benjamin since that was the only seat left. Wow, so much food. We had to buy enough for 4. Kingsley chewed as he spoke. Orissa smiled and picked up a sandwich. This is good. Kingsley arched a brow and shot Benjamin a look. At least someone has good taste. Benjamin glanced at him. Don't you know that you're supposed to eat with your mouth shut? Kingsley was rendered speechless once again. Meanwhile, Sean smiled and kept quiet. After taking a few bites, Orissa reached out for a piece of ravioli. Did you guys really spend the night on the mountain yesterday? She noticed the 2 men were still wearing yesterday's clothes and had dark circles under their eyes. The moment Orissa brought this up, Kingsley took this opportunity to complain about how cruel Benjamin had been to them. Chapter 273. I was almost sent to hell by those squawking birds. Boss, how will you explain yourself to my old man if I were to die of fright? Kingsley whined. Orissa found it really funny. She never knew Kingsley to be such a wuss. Is it really that scary? Of course it is, Mrs. Graham. You should try it out with my boss. It was terrible the way those birds were cooing. Kingsley's heart raced as he imitated the sound of the birds. I even got bullied by a monkey and thought it was a ghost. It was so scary. Sean burst into laughter when he was reminded of the look on Kingsley's face at the time. Benjamin's lips twitched. I've heard that bird sound before. It's kind of scary. Orissa wiped the corner of her eye. She had laughed so hard that tears came out. Don't worry, I will explain everything to your old man if you were to die of fright and I'll even give you a proper burial. Benjamin smiled dryly, causing their hairs to stand on end. Kingsley was at a loss for words while Sean broke into a fit of laughter. On the other hand, Orissa was staring at Benjamin in surprise. I never knew he had such a vicious tongue. After all, what are friends for? Benjamin gave her a sideways glance as Orissa turned back to her breakfast. Sean and Kingsley left shortly after the meal to get some beauty sleep while Arissa cleaned up after them and took out the trash. Do you still need me to apply the ointment? She noticed that Benjamin had almost recovered from his allergy reaction. I think he should be fine without the ointment now. I still haven't recovered. Benjamin gave her a look. Hearing that, Arissa brought the ointment over before calling out to the man that was sitting on the couch. Scoot over then. Benjamin walked over, unbuttoned his clothes, and took them off. Arissa's face reddened at the sight. It's just a torso and I'm already smitten by the sight of it. She swallowed hard and dared not look him in the eye. Nonetheless, she would steal glances of his sculpted body from time to time. His muscular body build was a pleasant sight to behold. Benjamin sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her. Get on with it then. Arissa gave him a look, squeezed out some ointment, and applied it to his rashes. Is it still itchy? No. Benjamin felt much better after applying the medication. I should be able to recover after one more dose of injection. Arissa was pleased to hear that. Does that mean Benjamin will be discharged this afternoon? What are you smiling at? Benjamin was dazzled by her smile. Arissa gave it some thought, turned to him, and exclaimed, I'm happy because you'll be discharged today. Who says I'm going to get discharged today? Benjamin harumphed. Arissa pursed her lips and stared at the arrogant man. You're fine now, aren't you? So why do you insist on staying here? Don't you want to go home? There's no way the hospital is more comfortable than your own home, right? Besides, the worst was over for him. He didn't even need to get hospitalized. It's not like he's going to have a relapse anytime soon anyways. Benjamin smirked. Do you want to go home? Arissa nodded. Of course. I want to know how the kids are doing. Benjamin stared at her and replied softly, they are well taken care of at the old manor. You don't need to worry. You're not the least bit worried about Gavin. Arissa turned to face him. As a parent, she was constantly worried about her children when they weren't within her line of sight. She would only feel at ease after seeing her children personally. Benjamin arched his brow and kept quiet. Arissa quickly applied ointment over his rashes, helped him put on his clothes, and called for the doctor. The doctor gave him a checkup and prescribed him some medication. Mr. Graham, the nurse, will be over in a bit for your injection. You don't need to take any more injections if your rashes are completely gone by this afternoon. Remember to take your pills on time so you can recover at a faster rate, the doctor instructed before calling for the nurse. Chapter 274. Arissa stared at Benjamin happily. See, the doctor said you will recover today. Benjamin stared at Arissa, who was grinning widely and snorted. He proceeded to lean against the headboard. Anyway, it's time to take your pills. Arissa poured him a glass of hot water and brought his medicine over. Benjamin did not say anything further and took his pills like he was supposed to. Do you still remember what you promised me yesterday? He decided to mention about yesterday's promise since he had nothing better to do at the moment. His question caught Arissa slightly off guard. It took her a while before she recalled what he was referring to and smiled awkwardly. I'll whip up something delicious for you later, okay? She didn't have to cook him breakfast since Kingsley and Sean already brought food over in the morning. Didn't you say I'll get discharged today? Benjamin asked in a flat tone. Whatever you say, Graham. It'll be best if you can get discharged today. I'll whip you something delicious when we get home. If not, I'll make you whatever you want later and bring it over to you, Arissa coaxed. Before long, the nurse pushed a cart into the ward and gave Benjamin his injection. Arissa's heart ached for him when she saw that he was being injected in the same arm. Graham, why don't you inject on the other arm? Surely, it'll hurt if he kept injecting the needle into the same arm. Benjamin gave her a look and extended his left arm over to the nurse. Just do it on this arm. Arissa was bereft of speech. Doesn't it hurt? It's not the same spot anyway, Benjamin replied faintly. The nurse gave a slight chuckle as she injected into another vein. Be careful not to touch it. She soon left with the cart after making sure everything was fine. Arissa came over and placed a pillow under Benjamin's arm to make him feel more comfortable. He stared at her. Where did you live with the kids before this? Arissa paused, confused as to why he would suddenly ask her such things. We stayed in a small town far from here at first. I brought them out of the country after a while. She had to take precautions since her enemies were in the country. Hence, fleeing the country was her only option. Benjamin noticed the look of hatred in her eyes. He held onto her clenched fist and gently pried them open, just in case she hurt herself. Orissa stared at him blankly. I'll make sure she pays for this, Benjamin promised before giving Jonathan a call. Have you looked into the case? Jonathan hasn't replied to my messages since yesterday. Benjamin frowned. Since when did he become so inefficient? I was just about to call you. Let's talk later. Meet me at City Hospital then, Benjamin replied. What are you doing in City Hospital? Jonathan wasn't aware that Benjamin had been hospitalized. Regardless, Benjamin couldn't be bothered to explain himself. Just get your ass over now. He arched his brow as Orissa reached out for his phone to put it back in its rightful place. I want to check my emails. Orissa retracted her hand. Are you done with those documents? Yes, Benjamin replied. With that, Orissa left him to his work. She then went over to the balcony to check on the clothes. Not long after, they were visited by Ethan. He brought some documents and breakfast over, unaware that they had already eaten. Benjamin instructed Ethan to take the documents away, gave him a few tasks, and told him to leave them alone. Eat up. Orissa's mouth twitched. I'm not hungry yet. Benjamin simply gave her a look and returned to his work. Orissa sat down and began to scroll through her phone. When the smell of food wafted over, she felt the urge to eat even though she wasn't hungry. Her eyes lit up when she saw what Ethan had brought. Breakfast foods from Drawbridge Dining. She picked up a fork and dug in. Benjamin looked up and smiled when he saw her eating sneakily. Chapter 275. When Orissa came to her senses, she realized that she had wolfed down more than half a portion of the food. She stole a glance at Benjamin and thought of asking if he would like to have some. Right that instant, someone opened the door abruptly. The next second, Jonathan stepped into the ward with a briefcase. Wearing a solemn look, he was dressed in a black suit with his hair slicked back neatly. Scrutinizing him from head to toe, Orissa could not resist admiring the man inwardly. Now that's how a lawyer should look. Sensing someone gazing at him, Jonathan turned instinctively. When a woman came into view, he was stunned momentarily. Is she Gavin's mother? He nodded at Orissa and greeted, Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, Orissa responded and curled up on the couch again. My goodness, this man is as stiff as a commander. Benjamin flashed him a glance and asked, Are you confident with it? Jonathan took out a document. Yes, I need you to sign this letter of authorization. After he went back the previous morning, he had spent time going through the case and managed to find a way out. Thus, he brought the letter of authorization for Benjamin to sign before the submission of the application for judgment. The latter took the pen to sign on the document as requested. Jonathan glanced at him and asked tactfully, Is she Gavin's mother? Yes, Benjamin replied briefly without looking up at him. Jonathan proceeded to take out another copy of the document right away. Then I'll need her signature for this document too. Orissa, come here, Benjamin called out at once. Orissa's lips twitched at the man's commanding tone before asking, What's the matter, Mr. Graham? Benjamin shot her a glance and handed her the pen. Jonathan handed her the document as well. Miss York, since you're the victim of the case and one of the plaintiffs, I'll need your signature for this letter of authorization. Oh, sure. Orissa took the document from him. After taking a look at it, she signed in the related section and asked curiously, Will Donna be sentenced to life imprisonment? I'll fight for that by all means, Jonathan responded resolutely. After getting to the bottom of the case, he was now in awe of Orissa. Apart from hiding herself from Donna, she had brought Gavin's younger brothers up painstakingly throughout the years. Moments later, Jonathan put the signed documents back into his briefcase. Only then did he ask Benjamin in great concern, What's wrong with you? Allergies. Feeling awkward, Benjamin was reluctant to explain in detail. Jonathan nodded. Have a good rest then. I have to go and submit the application for judgment to the court now. In the meantime, I'll also try to gather as much evidence as possible. Okay, just let me know if you need anything. Since Jack is back, you can assign him some tasks too, Benjamin reminded him. Got it. Jonathan nodded and left after waving at Orissa. So, he's Jonathan Patterson. She double confirmed with Benjamin out of curiosity. Earlier on, she had a hunch that she must have seen Jonathan somewhere before. After browsing through the site of the Advocates Association, she finally realized his identity. He was deemed the top-notch lawyer nationwide and could hardly be defeated by his peers in the court. So far, there weren't any cases that he could not handle. On top of that, he was well known overseas too. In fact, she had heard about him while still overseas. Narrowing his eyes, Benjamin gazed at her. Yes. Do you know him? She looked at him and replied casually, No, I don't know him. But I've heard of his name before. Benjamin nodded and continued to bury himself in his work again. Meanwhile, after finding out that Jonathan would be handling the case, Orissa felt relieved. A few hours later, Donna and the Adams family received the summons from the court simultaneously. Donna was sent into a tizzy in an instant. She was charged with kidnapping, unlawful house arrest, attempted murder, human trafficking, and others. Panicking, she noticed that Benjamin and Orissa's names were in the plaintiff section. How is that possible? How could he sue me? Donna wailed as she stared apprehensively at the names. The document soon crumpled in her clenched fists. This is impossible. Benjamin will never do this to me. You must have made a mistake. She bellowed at the officers, her eyes flared with utter frenzy. One of the officers yelled at her, Silence. Your father has assigned you a lawyer. Do you want to meet him? I want to see Benjamin now. She shrieked indignantly. At that moment, all she wanted was to see Benjamin so that she could ask him why he was so hard-hearted toward her. He should be grateful to me as I was the one who brought Gavin back to him. How could he join hands with Orissa in taking me to court? Besides, that despicable woman and her illegitimate children are still safe and sound. Since I did not commit a grievous deed, how could they sue me? Chapter 276. Paying no heed to Donna's request, Benjamin simply replied indifferently, We'll meet in court. The next moment, he hung up the phone. Astounded, Orissa asked curiously, Was that Donna? Seeing the hint of anxiousness that surfaced on her face, Benjamin reassured her, No, it's the officer. He told me that she requested to see me. Orissa nodded without uttering any words. Furrowing his brows, Benjamin asked, Are you worried that I'll go and see her? Orissa arched her brow and glanced at him quizzically. Didn't you reject already her a while ago? It's obvious that he's made his stance clear. With that thought in mind, Orissa suddenly felt relieved. She was convinced that it would be almost impossible for Donna to get a sentence reduction as long as Benjamin was reluctant to exercise restraint. Since I've kept my promise, don't you think you should be nicer to me? Benjamin asked her abruptly. Orissa looked at him and chuckled. How do you want me to serve you, Graham? I'm honored to be at your service. My hand is in pain. Benjamin grimaced as he glanced at the back of his hand. She took the hint and moved forward to stroke his arm in order to ease his pain. Is the drip flowing too fast? Let me adjust it. She raised her hand to adjust it to a slower mode and continued to stroke his hand. In the meantime, Benjamin continued to go through his documents. As Orissa fastened her gaze on the man unknowingly, she was mesmerized by his devastating good look. His thick eyebrows, obsidian eyes, high-bridged nose, and thin lips combined to form a face that was eye-catching from all angles. However, others tended to be intimidated by his imposing aura. Deep down, she gasped. My gosh, Benjamin is just so good-looking. The kids resemble him a lot and have his good looks too. Apart from that, she admired the man's long and curly eyelashes. Damn, how could a man have longer eyelashes than a woman? Just when Orissa was admiring his profile, Benjamin turned and looked into her eyes. At the sight of his reflection in them, he was in a joyous mood. What are you looking at? He raised his hand and tapped on her nose affectionately. Orissa blushed in an instant, his touch sending a ripple to her heart. Feeling her face heating up, she complimented, You have really long eyelashes. Arching his brows, Benjamin teased, And here I thought you would say that I'm good-looking. Orissa looked at him again and nodded sheepishly. No doubt, you do have a good look. After that, she shifted her gaze away hurriedly and touched his hand. Is it still painful? Benjamin hummed in acknowledgement before turning his focus on the documents again. Pursing her lips, Orissa could not resist scoffing inwardly. HMPH. I swear his mood changes as fast as the weather. When she saw the drip finishing soon, she thought of checking the man's allergic condition. Are you feeling better? She asked in great concern. From what she saw, the redness on his face was gone. Even so, he replied, I don't know. As he was still engaged in his work, Orissa lifted the hem of his top discreetly. She heaved a sigh of relief when she noticed that the redness on his body seemed to be subsiding gradually. When Benjamin tilted his head and gazed at her, she explained in embarrassment, I just want to check if you're getting better. I feel a lot better now, Benjamin replied briefly and switched to look at the documents again. Orissa looked at the drip again and noticed it was finishing soon. She wondered if she should go back to prepare the meals first or to leave only after the drip was finished. Coincidentally, the butler gave her a call, telling her that he would bring lunch for Benjamin. Orissa conveyed the butler's message to Benjamin right away. Edwin informed me that he would bring you lunch later. Benjamin was signing on a document when he uttered placidly, tell him that there's no need to come. Orissa's eyes lit up instantaneously. Does that mean we are going back in a while? Yes, he replied. Feeling over the moon, Orissa called Edwin back to tell him that they would be back soon. Flashing her a glance, Benjamin mocked, you must be bored stiff here. Hee, it's still all right I guess. Orissa smiled sheepishly. Oh, how about we stay for another day here then? Benjamin teased her, his lips curving into a smirk. Chapter 277. Why, since you're recovering well, you can be discharged at any time. After all, it's still better to rest at home. Orissa refuted. No matter how well equipped the hospital is, it's still not as cozy as the house. If it wasn't because his condition was rather serious yesterday, he would not have to be hospitalized. Staring at her subtly, Benjamin warned, even after I'm discharged, you still have to take great care of me. Don't ever think that you can relax after this. Orissa pouted and grumbled, of course, I know. I didn't say that I wouldn't take care of you after you're discharged, did I? Looking into her glimmering eyes, Benjamin's gaze darkened. Go ahead with the discharge procedure then. Hang on, the drip will still take some time. Orissa grinned ear to ear, delighted that they would probably be able to leave by noon. In high spirits, she packed their luggage and collected the clothes hung outside the ward. By the time their things were packed, Benjamin's medicine had finished dripping as well. Orissa called the nurse to help pull the needle out for Benjamin and update the doctor. After inspecting Benjamin's condition, the doctor allowed him to be discharged. Orissa was about to step out to handle his discharge procedure when he stopped her. Take your things. We're leaving now. Thinking that he was planning to go to the discharge counter with her, she assured him, the discharge procedure will take a while. Just wait for me here. Just get them to do it. He threw the bodyguard a glance and got to his feet to tidy up his documents. To play safe, Orissa scanned through the whole ward again. After ensuring nothing was left behind, she picked up the luggage. Mr. Graham, let me carry all these for you. She stretched out her hands swiftly to carry the pile of documents from Benjamin. He glanced at her and turned to step out without uttering any words. At the sight of Orissa carrying piles of things behind Benjamin, the bodyguard moved forward to help her. However, Benjamin gestured to him to stop. As there were not many things, Orissa could carry them effortlessly. Nonetheless, she had to quicken her pace at times to catch up to the man in front of her. Unaware that Benjamin had come to a halt at the entrance, she did not slow down and collided into a wall of flesh. Ouch! She staggered a few steps back before regaining her balance again. Before Benjamin could utter any words, someone mocked preemptively, oh. Isn't this Miss York? Dressed glamorously with her designer bag, Regina Lawson stared at Orissa with utter disdain in her eyes. With one arm wrapped around Hector, her chest was pressed against his arm intimately. The smugness written all over her face was repulsive to Orissa. It never occurred to her that she would bump into them there. She straightened up and shot them a frigid glance. The next second, she turned away in a grimace as if she had seen something revolting. With her nose in the air, she turned and told Benjamin, "Let's go." Regina could barely take her eyes off the good-looking man with a unique vibe of nobility alongside Orissa. Looking at how close they seemed, she was green with envy. Damn it, how did she get to know such a dignified man? Not to mention, he doesn't seem like an ordinary man. Standing alongside her, Hector felt a prickle of displeasure as he scanned Benjamin from head to toe. Sensing that the latter exuded a mightier aura of presence, his temper flared gradually. However, when he saw the piles of things in Orissa's arms, he smirked. "Ah, it seems that they're not a couple. HMPH. After rejecting me back then, she ends up working humbly for someone else now. Orissa York, I thought you would be able to get a high-paying job. It never crosses my mind that you'll become a secretary for someone. I bet this is a challenging job for you, huh?" Regina sneered at the top of her lungs, humiliating her wittingly in front of Hector. Orissa stopped in her tracks at once and turned to glare at her. Is there anything wrong in being someone's secretary? After all, it's a righteous profession, and I'm paid accordingly for my capabilities. With this, I don't have to rack my brains trying to two-time someone like you. Going around seducing the young heir of a wealthy family, and being someone's sugar baby. PFF'd. I'm ashamed of those young heirs of prominent families. They must have lost their minds falling heads over heels for this type of shameless woman. I can't believe some of them are even thinking of marrying such worthless women. They must be blind. What nonsense. Why, you'd better watch your mouth. Regina turned crimson with fury in an instant. Feeling a rush of anxiousness, she darted a glance at Hector. Bloody hell, how did the bitch find out about that? Chapter 278. Meanwhile, Hector's face fell instantaneously upon Orissa's words. The young heir of a wealthy family. Is she talking about me? The grimness on his face became more intense when he heard that Regina even had scandals with married men. Sensing that Hector seemed to be swayed by Orissa's words, Regina snarled, "Stop lying. If not, I'll rip you apart." Squeezing out an insincere smile, Orissa mocked, "I'm just telling the truth. Why are you flipping out all of a sudden? No doubt, it's easy as pie for you to rip me apart. After all, both the young heir and your beloved sugar daddies are backing you up. As for me, I'm just an ordinary woman without any support. Miss Lawson, please spare me. Don't be infuriated by my words." Then, she turned to look at Hector deliberately. "Mr. Robinson, am I right?" Wearing a look of utter grimness, Hector snapped at her, "If you did not reject me at that time, you would have been able to lead a better life now." Deep down, Hector fumed. How dare she try to imply that I'm bad at choosing women? I confessed my feeling toward her at that time, didn't I? But she rejected me in front of everyone. Boiling with rage, Regina's entire body trembled uncontrollably. Prevailed by jealousy, she glared at Orissa with flaring eyes. How could Hector still think of her now? In the meantime, a hint of displeasure flashed across Benjamin's eyes. He stepped forward and wrapped his arm around Orissa's waist, obviously possessive of her. Exuding an imposing aura, he snickered. "What makes you think that she's not living a good life like you? Don't jump to a hasty conclusion just because she's carrying all these in her arms. Let me tell you, this is simply how we tease each other." Tightening his arms around Orissa, he lowered his eyes and gazed at her lovingly as he murmured, "Am I right, Rissa?" Orissa could not resist but gulp as goosebumps prickled her skin at his exaggerative words. Even so, the domineering man shot her a warning look, hinting her not to go against his will. Thus, she had no choice but to put on her brightest smile and nod shyly. Yeah, Hector was overcome by another wave of fury when he saw how Orissa blushed as she snuggled into Benjamin's arms. He gritted his teeth as if she had betrayed him. Right at that instant, Benjamin shot him a sharp look. The man's intimidating gaze caused him to chicken out and shift his gaze away sheepishly. Moments later, he came to himself and glared at the man again. Turning a blind eye to the unreasonable couple, Benjamin headed toward his car with his arm wrapped around Orissa. Regina freaked out when Orissa and Benjamin gave no hoots to her. She caught up to them and yelled out, "Just a minute. Sir, I don't think you know how Orissa used to be, do you? She used to lead a promiscuous life and have countless bedmates. Do you know that she even had an abortion? However, her voice trailed off when Benjamin stopped in his tracks and turned to glance obliquely at her. The ferocity in his eyes almost scared the living daylights out of her. After a while, she continued to babble, "You can run a background check on her if you don't believe me. It's no secret to everyone." Regina felt a rush of schadenfreude in an instant. She could barely wait for the man to flip out and cut ties with Orissa. Orissa gritted her teeth in utter resentment. This bitch. She must be the one spreading rumor at the campus. At the peak of fury, she was about to settle the score with the despicable woman when the man alongside her uttered grimly, "Do you know what will happen to you if you try to frame my woman?" Sebastian's tone was as cold as the abyss, making the temperature around them drop drastically. Orissa's heart skipped a beat at once. She knew all too well that Benjamin's temper was flaring. Staring at the man's face that was darkening gradually, she was momentarily dazed. My goodness, he looks so captivating when he's angry. Intimidated by Benjamin's dangerous aura, Regina took one step backward instinctively. Putting on a brave front, she retorted, "Everyone knows about that. How can you say that I'm framing her?" "Fine," Benjamin hissed in an icy cold tone and turned to instruct the bodyguard solemnly, "Call my lawyer." "Understood, Mr. Graham." The bodyguard nodded respectfully. While making the call, he asked, "Miss York, what's this woman's name?" Orissa was stunned. She had thought that Benjamin was simply putting on a show to threaten Regina. Without any hesitation, she gladly replied, "Regina Lawson." "You," dumbstruck, Regina was rendered speechless. Although she felt a chill creeping up her spine, she still fought to maintain her tough front as she tamps down her fear. Chapter 279. Orissa shot Regina a cold glance and uttered sardonically, "Regina Lawson, if you apologize to me, I'll talk him out of suing you." The latter snapped, "Why should I apologize to you? After all, it's true that you've done all those shameful deeds." Orissa sniggered. "Well, Miss Lawson, be prepared to receive a letter from our lawyer then." Gazing at Benjamin, Hector gradually sank into deep thought. His bodyguard called him Mr. Graham, right? From what I know, there's only one Mr. Graham with a resemblance to this man in Delmore. Undeniably, he has good looks and is giving off an imposing aura. Not to mention, his unique vibe of nobility implies that he's from a prominent family. All of a sudden, an alarm bell went off in his head. Could he be Benjamin Graham? Get in the car. Paying no heed to the shameless couple, Benjamin hopped into the car with Orissa. Shortly after, their car sped off. After the bodyguard ended his phone call with the lawyer, he got into another car and followed behind them. When Hector caught a glimpse of Benjamin's unique car plate, his gut instinct told him that he had made the correct speculation. "I'm sure that the man is Benjamin Graham." "Hector, why didn't you say anything just now? Didn't you notice how that bitch bullied me with the man? How could you remain silent as if nothing happened?" Temper flaring, Regina shoved at Hector to vent her anger. Hector retracted his gaze and turned to look at her solemnly. At that very moment, he felt that the woman who was acting like a shrew was indeed a stark contrast to Orissa. "Do you know who that man is? You'll only end up in a tight corner by getting on his nerves." Deep down, Hector was worried sick. He knew that Benjamin could effortlessly pay him back in his coin. My God, how did Orissa get to know such an omnipotent man? Damn it, I shouldn't have piped out those words just now. In an instant, Regina could tell that something was bugging his mind. Feeling a rush of inexplicable fear, she asked apprehensively, "Who is he?" Obviously, she noticed that the man was seemingly far better than Hector. Nonetheless, she doubted if he was being pretentious. Throwing her a meaningful look, Hector enunciated, "He's Benjamin Graham." The next moment, he turned and walked toward his car. Benjamin Graham. There was an instant change in Regina's countenance. Amid her jealousy, there was a hint of unmissable excitement. What the heck? That man is Benjamin Graham. How the hell did Orissa get so lucky? I have her beautiful look too, but why can't I get to know such a stunning man like him? Damn it, how could I be so rude to him just now? Her face turned ashen when she recalled that Benjamin would sue her. She could not help but wonder if it was too late for her to apologize to him. Just when she was deep in her thoughts, she saw Hector get into his car. Dumbstruck, she dashed toward him. "Hector, we've just reached here a while ago, and I haven't consulted the doctor yet." "Where are you going?" "You can go on ahead and consult the doctor yourself." Hector started the car right away. Infuriated, Regina grabbed the door and stomped on the ground. "Didn't you promise that you would accompany me?" At the same time, she grumbled to herself, "It's that bitch's fault. If not, Hector won't change his mind abruptly. HMPH. You should get your sugar daddy to accompany you then." Hector stepped on the accelerator, and the car sped off. Subsequently, Regina fell down and scraped her elbow. "Hector Robinson, you bastard!" She wailed furiously and lobbed her handbag at his car, but it missed the target. "Orissa York, you're the one who placed me in this pathetic state. I won't let you off the next time we meet," she squealed, wearing a look of sheer indignance. As Benjamin's stunning figure flashed across her mind, something came to her. At that moment, a gleam of malice flickered in her eyes. In the car, Orissa turned to look at the man beside her. Looking ahead silently, Benjamin's expression was cold and solemn. Is he still feeling annoyed? Mustering up her courage, she broke the silence warily. "Thanks for helping me just now." He turned to gaze at her with displeasure in his eyes. "What is the relationship between you and that man?" Orissa was astounded by his tone. "Oh my, is he jealous?" She pondered for a while before replying slowly, "He's just a boastful heir from a quite well-off family. There's nothing between us. I can't deny that he did indeed pursue me before, but I rejected him at once. I swear that I'm not closely acquainted with him." Benjamin gazed at her and gradually relented. She doesn't seem to be lying. He turned to look ahead again. Miraculously, his displeasure moments ago seemed to have vanished partially. Even so, another wave of displeasure surged from within him again when he recalled how Hector had gazed at Orissa earlier. It was as though the latter was drooling over his belongings. Chapter 280. Pulling on the hem of Benjamin's shirt, Orissa tried to appease him. "I'm telling the truth. I'm not closely acquainted with him. Don't be angry with me, okay?" Deep down, she was over the moon. He seems to be jealous of Hector because he cares about me. Benjamin glanced at the woman who was obviously flattering him. In a split second, his irritation was gone. Orissa. Her heart flattered when he suddenly called out her name. Benjamin leaned closer to her and looked intently into her eyes. Orissa held her breath and blinked her eyes in bafflement. "Do you know what will happen if you dare lie to me?" Benjamin questioned her. The man continued the gaze at her without opening his mouth. Unable to take his intense gaze, Orissa turned away and uttered sheepishly, "I'm not interested in that kind of man. I won't simply accept any man just because he confesses his love to me." Benjamin's eyes lit up at that, but he asked placidly, "Then which type of man are you interested in?" "Needless to say, it must be kind of man like you. You're the one I fell for, Graham." Orissa blushed instantly upon saying that. Hearing that, the driver's hand slipped, causing the car to swerve slightly. Benjamin glared at him in an instant. "I'm sorry, Mr. Graham." The driver apologized to him immediately and focused on the road. He did not dare to eavesdrop on their conversation again. My, seems like Miss York is good at flattering Mr. Graham. How bold of her, but surprisingly, he doesn't mind her teasing at all. "What do you like about me?" Benjamin asked as he continued to gaze at her. Orissa was dumbfounded. Why is he insisting on asking me this?" She continued to butter him up by replying, "Well, I like your good look, your figure, and everything." There was an unmissable twinkle in Benjamin's eyes as he snorted. "HMPH. You're very good at flattering me, huh?" Heaving a silent sigh of relief, a bright smile surfaced on Orissa's face. "Phew, he's obviously not easy to please. If it wasn't because of my eloquence, he'll still show me that sullen look of his." She darted a look at him again. "If you don't trust me, why are you still willing to teach that woman a lesson for my sake?" Benjamin cast her a look before leaning against the back of the car seat. "I won't let anyone humiliate my woman." Orissa's heart flinched at his words. So, he helped me because of his pride, and not because he trusted me. Do you mean to say that as long as they're your woman, you'll protect them no matter who they are? Orissa asked with a hint of disappointment in her tone. Benjamin sensed something awry in her tone and turned to look at her. His heart wrenched when he saw that she seemed to be down in the dumps all of a sudden. Knitting his brows in bafflement, he could not help but wonder. Did she misunderstand something? Not everyone is qualified to be my woman, you know. The words escaped from his lips abruptly. Huh, Orissa looked at him in disbelief. Benjamin turned to look ahead again. Regardless of how well he was bottling up his emotions, a hint of awkwardness flashed across his face. Scrutinizing his countenance, Orissa's heart could not resist leaping with joy. So, he does like me, right? If not, such an omnipotent man like him wouldn't have let me stay by his side. Besides, he is willing to settle a score with my ex on behalf of my children and me. I'm sure he won't be bothered with that if he doesn't have any feelings for me. Grinning blissfully, she uttered coyly, "It's a pleasure to be Mr. Graham's woman." He snorted, "But you're reluctant before this, weren't you? You've misunderstood me. Ha ha, I was just dumbfounded back then. There's no reluctance whatsoever. It's a blessing to be able to stay by your side. Mr. Graham, I promise to never go against your will." Orissa tried to reassure the man. Benjamin pursed his lips and felt like teasing her. He raised his hand instinctively to pinch her cheek, causing her to gasp at the sudden pain. Rubbing her cheeks to ease the pain, she looked at him quizzically and whined, "Why did you pinch me?" "I just feel like it," Benjamin replied matter-of-factly in all seriousness. Utterly speechless, Orissa's lips twitched. "Just feel like it? Can I kick him out of the car with the excuse that he looks annoying to me then?"